Hi. At the end of our last segment, at the top of page 31 of The Three Worlds, Nelson Barbour and Charles Taze Russell, Nelson Barbour had made the point that 1 Thessalonians 5, 1-5 has no apparent meaning unless there's somebody who's not in the darkness. And of course it is Nelson Barbour and Charles Russell who are not in the darkness as everybody else is. This concept, as we put it last time, the third gotcha, which is that there are some who have present truth and the rest are in the darkness, comparatively. So now he goes on from that thought to the Thessalonian thought to another thought derived from the last couple of chapters of Daniel, that the wise shall understand and that the true knowledge will become abundant. And he starts his discussion this way. This harvest message is the natural outcome of the parable of the 10 virgins. And they that are ready will go in before the others know anything, more than that he is near, that is. And believing him near in the immediate future, as so many do, with no definite knowledge on the subject, will help you as it helped the first house of Israel, when their rabbis taught that the time of his coming drew near, and all men were in expectation. And they continued to think it near until their destruction came. They looked for him to come out of Bethlehem, but the angel of the Lord turned him aside to Nazareth, that he might be called a Nazarene. You are looking for him, not as he went, but in all his glory. Be careful you do not stumble, because he comes as he went away, and harvests the earth before he makes the open manifestations for which you look. And when too late you find the harvest is past and the summer is ended, and your soul not saved, and yourself with the class represented in Matthew 25 verse 11. Afterwards came the other virgins, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. Christ appeared in various forms and on various occasions during the 40 years after his resurrection, because he wanted witnesses that he had risen. But when he would vanish out of their sight, they could not follow or trace his locality. But now he has a work to do alone and requires no eyewitnesses. I have trodden the winepress alone, and of the people there were none with me. During that 40 days he did appear in the secret chamber, the doors being shut. He also appeared in the wilds of Galilee, and there ye shall see him. But now, if they shall say unto you, Behold, he is in the secret chamber, believe it not. Behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Then he required witnesses. Now he will have none. This is an intriguing thought, considering that the religion that derives from Barbour and Russell will become known as Jehovah's Witnesses. Here he's using Barbour is actually using the word witnesses in a correct technical sense, unlike Jehovah's Witnesses today. The days will come when ye shall desire to see one of the days of the Son of Man, and ye shall not see it. Luke 17 verse 22. For as the lightning that cometh out of the east and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the presence of the Son of Man be. Matthew 24:27. And Luke 17:24 supports the same rendering. For as the lightning, etc., so shall the Son of Man be in his day. Spiritual bodies are represented as shining as the lightning. I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven, according to Luke 10 verse 18. His countenance was like lightning. That's Matthew 28:3. His face as the appearance of lightning. Daniel 10:6. And last of all, he was seen of me also. 1 Corinthians 15 verse 8. That, of course, being Paul. When Paul saw him, the shining was so bright that his sight was destroyed. And yet the men that journeyed with him saw no man. The chariots of fire and horses of fire round about Elisha were not seen by his servant. And because during the days of the Son of Man, Christ is to be here in his spiritual body to gather his own, instead of proving that mortals will see him, proves exactly the contrary. For although spiritual bodies are represented as shining like the lightning, and perhaps moving as the lightning, still no mortal ever saw a glorified spiritual body without a miracle, nor indeed one that was not glorified. No sinful man will ever see him as he is, for without holiness no man can see the Lord. And yet he is to reveal himself to the world in flaming fire and in various ways. but we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. He shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel and the trump of God. The trumpets all have voices, and the noise, shout, voices, trumpets, etc., connected with the coming of Christ and the closing work of the gospel are events, and not literal noise or metallic trumpets as under the law. Set ye up a standard in the land, blow the trumpet among the nations, that's Jeremiah 51:27, does not mean metallic trumpets. And to suppose that Christ and the angels are to get up an exhibition of that character is simply childish. The angelic movements under the seventh trumpet are as noiseless as they have been under the other 6 trumpets, or as were the hosts that surrounded Elijah. The way is narrow. Even the warnings of Christ and some of the sayings of Paul are hard to understand, as Peter says, and are designed as stumbling blocks. Knowing the time is perhaps of no importance in itself, but walking in the light is all important. And if you are in the light, you will know. The wise shall understand. And the ecclesia, that is the church, will know the time of their visitation. Whatever your teachers, who are themselves in darkness, may say to the contrary, take heed lest your hearts be overcharged with the cares of this life, and so that day come upon you unawares. The bridegroom came, and they that were ready went in with him to the marriage, and the door was shut. Nowhere in the Bible is there a hint that the world or the foolish virgins will behold the meeting of the bridegroom and his chosen. They are taken away noiselessly and by unseen hands during the harvest, and will be visible only when the Lord cometh with 10,000 of his saints to execute judgment upon all. So here we see the seed of the invisible presence very plainly taught, and the claim is made that they exclusively have this light from God. This Gnostic strain in Barbour and Russell here, when I say Gnostic, I mean this idea that only the wise shall understand, and it's an anointing, a special anointing you have from God that will give it to you. You don't have to consult books or indeed any of the wise men that came before you. You get it by an anointing that you uniquely have. This idea of a unique anointing, of course, still with the Watchtower and JW.org. This is why they understand and nobody else does. And the application of the Daniel text to themselves, as well as the Thessalonian text, that we are not in darkness as others are. All still with the Watchtower in application. So I put on your screen a video link we did to a discussion of 1 John, where the Gnostic strain of the defectors, of the apostates of the first century, the ones that John describes in 1 John chapter 2, that discussion, a fairly lengthy one, a detailed one by the way, working through most of that chapter. And also another link to Bible authority. What is the nature of Bible authority? It is linked, as Barbour says here, to the word witness. And that idea of authority is completely gone now from the Watchtower. And I think it has to do with the failure of the 1914 date. It was very plain the invisibility would only extend to the end of that harvest period, which was 1914. Then they expected, or at least Barbour expected, and Russell signed on for it, the idea was that Christ would appear. So that disappointment, double disappointment, when in 1874 he didn't appear. They didn't drop the date, they just dumped the idea of a visible appearance. And again in 14 it would be the same. The date is kept, but the idea of a visible appearance, a visible parousia, is dumped. Next time, he has a brief excursus into the definitions of saint and angel